Well, chefs, it's back. The show that cooked up a storm last year has returned for its third season, and following its award-winning year, big things were expected. With a season that followed on directly from the ending of Season 2 and leaned even more into its creative liberties and approaches that it took in the previous two installments, did this one leave as nice of a taste as what we were served before? Well, let's jump into Season 3, discuss each and every character, explain the ending, and answer if it was good. So, let's get into it. Here is the Bear Season 3 ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Carmy Berzatto. There's no denying the fact that Carmy is a fragile and broken individual. His mental health is all over the place, and he tries to solve it all by throwing himself into a new project. In Season 1, it was all about taking over his brother's sandwich store following his death. Then it was about renovating the restaurant into the Bear in Season 2, and in this season, it was all about doing enough to warrant getting a star. All of his trauma dictates who he is as a person. This stems from his childhood and what he went through with his mother, and also the head chef in the New York restaurant that he studied in. Within this season of the show, the entirety of the first episode was clips that pretty much showed us how Carmy became the person that he is in the present day. And even though it felt like he'd been through a lot when learning about becoming the chef that he wanted to be, it was mainly in New York where he underwent the trauma and the bad experiences. Yet that one singular defining moment of his life was shaping him the most. In all of the other places, it seemed as though he was treated well and wasn't made to feel worthless. Even given advice and welcomed with open arms and made to feel part of the community. But still, that very first place that he was at became who he was. There was a line in the final episode when all of the chefs were sat at the funeral of Andrea Terry's restaurant where it was mentioned that you often absorb the culture that you're taught. And Carmy has pretty much become the very person that he once despised, and it's rubbing off on Sydney and she can see it and it's making her want to walk away. I think there's a sense of guilt that lies within Carmy as well. The fact that he wasn't there when his brother died, he didn't go to the funeral, and he lost touch with the family. In the very first episode, when he was leaving for New York at the airport, where his whole journey began, Sugar said to him, "I feel like I'm never going to see you again," and he responded by saying, "You'll see me again." However, the person that got on the flight never returned home because he was a changed man by then, so Sugar never really did see the brother that left, something which I thought was quite sad. Another large part of Carmy's arc was the fact that he wanted to apologize to Claire over what he said to her when he was locked in the refrigerator in the Season 2 finale, but he couldn't bring himself to. He said it to the phone, but he was unable to press the call button. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really find the Carmy and Claire love arc that interesting in the show, and I'm not that fazed that it didn't get resolved yet, because I feel there's so much more to the character than being heartbroken over a girl that he likes. As well as that, Donna is somebody that Carmy needs to reconnect with. He actively put off speaking with his mother for the entirety of the season due to knowing what baggage she brings with her, and also the fear that his mind will be transported back to the negative times. However, Carmy needs to realize that he's actually in the negative times and his life is full of stress and chaos. Something which his mother most definitely passed down to him. As much as he doesn't want to think that, he knows that they're more similar than they are different. Carmy was changing the menu every day and including many non-negotiables in order to do what he could to get the restaurant to a high enough standard to earn a star. However, that meant that he was spending more and more money and the business just simply wasn't making that much money. It wasn't possible for the restaurant to continue in the way that it was running, so Jimmy essentially said that if they got a bad review then he'd be cutting the finances and selling the place. In the final few moments of the episode, we saw that the review came in. We didn't see the full review, but with words such as sloppy, inconsistent, simple, disappointed, subtract, overdone, tired, and stale, it doesn't look like the review is going to be the best, which means that there are uncertain times ahead for Carmy and the restaurant. Carmy and Richie's friendship was something which also had a light shone on it in this season of the show following the argument that they had in the closing moments of Season 2, and it was never resolved by the end of this season, considering that they avoided each other at the funeral. I felt like this feud was perfectly summed up by this shot here, showing the two leaders of the two different sides of the restaurant with their clashing views. Carmy is a control freak and doesn't have room to enable change, so the friction was always there. The standout moment in this season for Carmy, though, was when he met with the person that he always wanted to meet with again, the person who caused him so much trauma, and as expected, he couldn't even remember Carmy's name properly and said how he didn't think about him at all. What was interesting about this meeting was that his views of being a good chef were so different to everybody else's that was sat inside the restaurant. Hearing their stories, listening to them talking about sharing experiences whilst learning, and watching their customers grow throughout life, he was the polar opposite. He was all about breaking the chefs, making time stop rather than allowing every second to count, causing his chefs to become absent from the world outside of the kitchen and ensuring that they'd never be the same again, ultimately killing parts of your mind in order to allow the skill to grow. Carmy sacrificed a lot to be where he was in the present day, and I think he now questions if it was something that was worth it. A life of chaos, stress, uncertainty, regret, and earning one day to pay for the day before. That's something that's just going to keep getting continued as the show develops. With Season 3 and Season 4 being filmed immediately after each other, I feel it will be a key theme. However, I don't think he'll change until he truly addresses the issues at his core, and I think it all starts with Donna. Sydney. Sydney had her own demons that she was facing in this season of the show, but they weren't demons that were self-inflicted, they were ones that were being placed on her shoulders. For example, Carmy really wanted her to be a part of the Bear and was offering her to become a partner, but she was holding off on the deal and wasn't signing. This was for a number of different reasons. I feel it stemmed from the fact that the place was just pure chaos, and it ultimately meant that she didn't know if she could handle an environment like that long term. However, as time went on, I think it then started to develop and it transformed into another reason. And I think it was the fact that she wasn't able to make any decisions and she wasn't given any true recognition for the work that she was doing. All of the articles about the restaurant praised Carmy for his development of the Bear and the food, but none of it mentioned Sydney, despite the fact that she had a large role to play in it. As well as that, we also saw that Shapiro from Andrea's restaurant wanted to open up his own restaurant, and he wanted her to be CDC. This would allow her to have full creative license of the back of house, the menu, the theme, just everything. It was pretty much her dream. So that was something that was also preventing her from signing the contract and moving forward, as she was too afraid to tell Carmy. Humans are shaped by their environments, and that's something that's happening with Sydney. Legacy was a big theme in this season of the show, especially in the restaurant. Carmy spoke about how chefs learn from the places where they work, and then, as they move on, each part of the place that they've worked at will start to drip feed into the other, and it almost becomes like an interconnected web of things that have been learned. Sydney is now starting to adopt Carmy's chaotic mindset that was passed down to him and the stress, and she doesn't know what to do about it. I think she does desperately want to leave because her dream is on the other side of the decision, but she fears what it will do to Carmy and everybody else that works there. The last time that we saw her, she was looking at an article about how the beef evolved with the city, and we saw a shot of the main characters from Season 1 of the show compared to how they were in the present day. And I think she knows the importance of what that family is. It's more than just a restaurant. There was a shot that was present with Carmy in Season 1 or Season 2 of the show, which occurred for Sydney in this season. And the fact that she was having a panic attack at the end of the season showed that she was pretty much morphing into Carmy. As I mentioned earlier, all of the chefs were discussing the fun they were having and learning their skills and what it was like to have a mentor that championed them. But Sydney didn't have that with Carmy. She had the role in the kitchen, but she was powerless and didn't get the praise, and I think that will ultimately drive her to leave. Richie. Man, I love Richie as a character. I didn't really like him in Season 1, Season 2 saved him, but then in this season we saw him mature in a way where he's now so different to how he once was. I actually found Richie's story quite sad in this season of the show. He's somebody that's truly alone, and I think he's really feeling that. It was best summed up when he was talking to Sugar. They were discussing when he was with Tiff and when she went into labour, and how on the day before he was out with Mikey on a trip. Before he could finish the story, he ended up breaking down into tears, and I think this is because the life that he loved was in the past. He had his best friend, he had his wife, and he had his family, whereas now he has none of that. Well, not in the way that he did before. And also, Tiff was getting married to somebody else. Plus, let's also remember as well, himself and Carmy didn't have the friendship and togetherness that they had either, so he really did have a large absence in his life. No father wants their child to worry about them, and when he said that he didn't want Evie to think that he was alone, it was a heartbreaking moment. When he finally took off his wedding ring and understood that there was no chance that he was getting Tiff back, it showed that he was finally letting go of that part of his life and he could start to build his own future. He wanted to hate Frank, but he simply couldn't. He doesn't want to go to the wedding, yet I feel he will. He's a caring person at his core, and because he's the only real family to Tiff, he'll most likely disregard his feelings in order to ensure that she feels okay. Richie was against Carmy for the most part of the season, especially when it came to the non-negotiables that Carmy was implementing. This is because Carmy was just taking over and not allowing anybody to really do what they were supposed to do, so it just caused the divide to grow even more between them. I think their relationship will start to repair when Carmy fully starts to address all of the deep-rooted issues that he needs to address. I also feel like Richie's probably going to be entering some kind of romance with Jess. There's always been a bit of a connection there, but the fact that they reconnected in the latter part of this season, it showed that there could be a future between them, one that I think will serve his character development in such a positive way. Tina. Like in Season 2, where Marcus and Richie got a standalone episode, this season gave Tina an entire episode and we saw how she ended up working at the establishment. Following her losing her job of 15 years and struggling to find work, she walked into the beef one day and got chatting to Mikey whilst she was breaking down. This was such a beautiful moment. They were both sharing their troubles with one another and essentially was just being an ear to listen to each other's problems. Knowing what happened to Mikey and that he ended things for himself and hearing him say to her that he appreciated the conversation, it really did show us what it truly meant to him. Mikey changed Tina's life that day and gave her a chance when nobody else would. He integrated her into his family at a time where she was going to lose it all. I think this episode also gave us some clarity as to why Tina was so resistant to change in the first season of the show. Because there was familiarity, there was a fear of maybe losing her job again. Plus, Carmy and Sydney were changing things that somebody that she truly cared about who changed her life put in place. Tina has gone through a lot in this show, but it was nice to finally see behind the mask, see some emotion and understand how she ended up there. Whilst the episode was about Tina, it also felt like it shone a light on people that do have to re-enter the job market when they're slightly older, and they find that the space that they once navigated is so different to what it was when they first entered it, almost like they'd been forgotten and left behind. Many people are loyal to companies and get let go and then have to compete with people that are younger and also in environments where the goalposts have changed and degrees outshine experience, strangely enough. So it was an episode that I feel a lot of people will most likely relate to. Sugar. Sugar got her chance to shine in episode 8, which really felt like it was this season's equivalent to last season's episode 6. The one that was full of chaos and really made us feel uncomfortable when watching. Whether that be due to the extremely close-up shots to the face, abnormally close, the interrupting that Donna kept doing, the heart rate monitor beating, or the heartbeat that would be beating underneath the episode. Sugar had just gone into labour, and after working her way through her contacts with nobody answering, the last person she called was her mother. When Donna arrived, the chaos did truly begin. However, amongst the chaos, there was a beauty that lied within this episode. This was an episode that marked a turning point in the relationship of Natalie and her mother. One which concluded in such a beautiful way. Massive life events can often bring families closer together, and that was definitely the case with this one. Natalie hadn't even informed her mother that she was pregnant because she wanted her child to come into the world in a way that wasn't filled with chaos and drama the moment that they entered. She loves her mother, but she doesn't like the baggage that comes with her, and that was one of Natalie's deepest thoughts and worries throughout this season. The hope of not ending up like her own mother and being a good one. When Natalie asked Donna what her mother was like because she couldn't remember her, Donna responded by saying, "You don't want to know," which to me tells me all that we need to know about why Donna is the way that she is. Like Carmy, Donna is a result of her environment and her upbringing and the chaos that was most probably there, so I sympathized with her when she said that. We saw Donna being a mother for the first time in the show, and even though the both of them couldn't say "I love you" to one another, the song that Donna played to Natalie, which was the song which was being played when Natalie was born, had the lyrics "Baby, I love you" in them. With Natalie even messaging her mother when she was back home, I think it showed that their relationship is going to change moving forward. Marcus. Marcus didn't have too large of an involvement in this season of the show, but I think what he did in this season is going to be heavily connected to season 4. The last we saw of Marcus in season 2 of the show was when his mother passed away, and we instantly saw that Carmy connected with that loss and grief that Marcus was feeling. However, Marcus didn't want to hold on to it for too long and just wanted to get back to work and crack on as his mother would have liked him to have done. Marcus did have an extremely powerful moment in this season when he gave the speech at the funeral, and it was a moment where you felt the pain that he was feeling. It seemed like he was working on a dessert which was a tribute to his mother, and although it wasn't complete, I think it will probably make an appearance in the next season of the show. My review of season 3. I thought it was great to have the bear back on our screens after a year. Do I think it's the best season of the show? No, I don't, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Season 2 was just simply incredible, and it was a masterpiece when it came to being a season of television. Every episode was incredible in its own right, and I don't think that was the case with this one. There were some real standout ones, such as episode 1, episode 6, and episode 8 through to the finale, but they didn't hit in the same way that season 2 did, but that's just me. The whole first episode was something that I thought was really well executed and needed. We didn't know much of Carmy before we were first introduced to him other than the odd flashback in episode 6 of season 2. So seeing his full journey from leaving Chicago up until the moment that he found out about his brother's death, it provided a lot of clarity and allowed us to see the character in a different light. The realness of the stories that we see being depicted on screen is something that I think we just connect to. Whether that be Carmy, Sydney, Tina, Richie or Marcus, they all just land with impact and feel close to home, even if we've not been through any of those life events before. Episode 2, which was mainly around the countertop in the kitchen, was a very well structured episode. It was all about the conversation getting more chaotic and layers being added to it. The camera work, which was focused on cutting to the person talking on the beat of a word and then snapping back when somebody would say something else, was a really smart technique that added a slight edge of uncomfortability to it. I'm also glad that we got to see more of Mikey in this season of the show. He's the main reason why a lot of the characters are doing what they're doing and are in the positions that they're in within their life. So seeing snapshots of what they were like before and how they interacted with Mikey is something that I do appreciate. It very much felt like season 3 was kind of like a part 1 of 2, especially with the way that it was left on a cliffhanger and also the fact that the seasons were shot at the same time, following on from one another. There's no other show that's like it that's out there, and I do love it. It's real, it's creative, it's glossy, it's rough around the edges, and it wants to make us feel uncomfortable. But do you know what? It's ours to enjoy. So, there you have it. The Bear Season 3 ending explained.